the normal abdomen and the parameters for evaluation. So when we say the term radiographic findings, those are actually observations that you're seeing that are not normal. So you would say normal kidney as a finding, because that's normal. So when you do findings, you talk about what you see is abnormal. Let's say if you see gas in the stomach. Well, gas in the stomach could be normal, gas in the stomach could be abnormal. So you can note that. If you think there's more gas than normal, then you would note that as a finding. Not that there's gas in the stomach, because I'm gonna say, well, what you want to do about that? If that is a finding and you think that it's significant, then what are you thinking? So remember, so whenever you list a finding, you got to have something in your head about why you're listing that as an abnormality. Everybody understand that when we say findings? Okay. So let's talk about normal. Now, for normal, just a review, the liver extends just slightly to the costal arch. When we say costal arch, it's where the ribs curve down to the sternum. So it should project just caudal to that at a sharp margin. In cats, all of the liver is usually cranial to the costal arch in the cat. And in the cat, where we saw the case on Monday, where there's a large amount of fat in the falciform ligament. So it's normal to see, it's insignificant to see the liver elevated from the sternum in a cat by a large amount of fat in the falciform ligament. If you happen to see that in a dog, that would be abnormal. So that would be a finding that you would note. The stomach is parallel to the ribs, and that's one that I use. There are other parameters that you can use. You can use perpendicular to the spine or parallel with the plane of the ribs. And this is the one that I use. Whatever you use, you need to be consistent. You wouldn't use one parameter and then use another parameter in another case. Just pick one and go with it. And that's the one you memorize, and that's the one you use on each of your films when you interpret. On the ventral dorsal view, the stomach crosses the midline. So the pylorus, or pyloric antrum, or the pyloric outflow tract is on the right side. So when I say right side, am I talking about my right side, the dog right side? Am I talking about what's on the film, which would be the animal's right and to my left? So when you get to clinics, when I say right side, don't be, if it's a DV or a VD, it doesn't matter, right? It does not matter. You put the film images up the same way. What's right is to your left, what's left is to your right. Handshaking position. Doesn't matter if it's DV, VD. If it's hanging up, hanging, doesn't matter. Left to right. Everybody got that? So please don't let me have to. I'll just remind you, but I try to do it with kitten gloves. Is that what you said? With love. With love. Oozing of love. Everybody in here has been in love at some point. Somebody here has lost a love at some point.
I have not. I'm so excited for that.
It took me a moment to just talk about love. I'm glad you brought that up. Sometimes people love us and you really don't, doesn't seem like it, does it? Like, oh my gosh, if this is love, I don't want it. Give it back. And it's only because some of us as, I can only talk about myself. It's because I want you to be perfected and a better person. But you can tell if somebody cares about you or not. Children know that as they grow up. So all those bad words my daughter said about me, when I used to catch her sneaking in at night, listen, I'm human just like you. Some of you your appearance already. And if you're not, you're gonna be, and maybe you don't wanna be, but you're going to be a caretaker for somebody. Somebody you love. Okay. So all right, it took you a moment. Okay. Now let's get back to the abdomen. So the stomach crosses midline. Fundus of the stomach, upper left quadrant, or upper left region of the abdomen, or upper left abdomen. All any of those are acceptable. In the cat, you know, every time we talk about the dog, we're going to talk about a beautiful cat. Everybody ought to have a cat or experience a cat.
That's right.
It's experience.
Alrighty, well, your first patient gonna be a cat. It's gonna be a mean, ornery tomcat. I wish you the best. They have such personalities. They really do. Okay, I have stories about that too. I'll talk about that at some point when I want to take a moment. So in the cat, the stomach is in the upper left quadrant, the complete stomach. Usually the pyloric antrum or outflow tract is on midline, so you wouldn't see the pylorus in the upper right in a cat. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So that's normal. So this is an example of the stomach in the cat, and so you can see the stomach in the upper left. And I put an arrow here so you can note there's a little bit of gas in the cecum of the cat. Comma shape in the cat and sigmoid shape in the dog. And typically we don't see the cecum. If you do see it, it's usually a little bit of gas in it. It may or may not be significant. So let's talk about using different positions to give additional information about the stomach. Because the stomach can be filled with fluid and look like a rubber ball when there's fluid in the pyloric antrum. So what we do before we give it a contrast study or give it contrast material, we just do positional views. And so you use gas. This is one good thing about the stomach, about the abdomen, is that if there's gas in different parts of the GI tract, you can use positional views to say, okay, I'm actually looking at a part of the stomach and not something that is abnormal. So you need to memorize 2 of the 4, because the other 2 would be just the opposite. Well, the easiest one to remember is the right side down. Right side down, what's on the right side? The pyloric antrum. So right side down, then you expect for fluid to move dependently and air will rise to the fundus. That's pretty clear, right? Right side down, pylorus right side, and then gas is in the fundus. Ventral dorsal, dorsal ventral. Now I memorized the dorsal ventral because that's how the pet is standing. That's how the pet is standing. So when the pet is standing, the highest point of the stomach is the fundus. Let's go back and look at it. So look at this as a dorsal ventral. Pet is standing. So the highest point of the stomach is going to be the fundus. So you're going to see gas there. That means the fluid or contrast material would be in the pylorus and body. So those are the 2 that I memorized, and then the other 2 are just the opposite. So you're just shifting the gas. Okay? The reason why this is important is when pets swallow foreign bodies, and if they're soft tissue, they're going to lodge at the pyloric antrum. That's where they get stuck. If they get out, the next place is going to get caught is probably at the ileocolon junction. So it's at those narrowed areas that foreign bodies tend to lodge. Because fluid in the pyloric antrum commonly is associated with a rubber ball, for example. So then we do these positional views to rule it out. Okay, this is an example, right lateral versus left lateral. So it's the right lateral, gas is in the fundus of the stomach, pyloric antrum is not visualized because it's fluid filled. Left lateral, just the opposite. So we'll take a moment. Everybody following that? Okay, great. Okay, let's look at this one. Right lateral versus left lateral. Gas in the fundus, fluid in the pyloric antrum, right side down. Does that look like a rubber ball? So if you shift and do the opposite view, then you shift the gas to the pyloric antrum, and therefore you can say, no, that is not a mass, that is not a foreign body, you're actually looking at the pyloric antrum. Now, in all of the years that I have been in academia, I have had several, even when I was in Michigan, several practitioners that send films to say a history of swallowing foreign material. I want to know if that is a foreign body. And so, we respond with love, and then we say, just do the opposite. You don't need to beat up the person, just do the opposite view. It's more likely the pyloric antrum. So keep that in mind. It is commonly confused. So make sure you don't go to surgery for a rubber ball that is actually the pyloric antrum. Question.
I know we're talking about stomach, but in the left lateral, is the liver small because that's kind of like more cranial than I would.
Okay, is the liver small?
I would say so.
Okay, is the liver small? Because you are speaking. Is the liver small?
Yes.
Okay. So in this case, the liver is small because it's cranial to the costal arch. Yes, absolutely. Good observation. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about abnormal liver. Well, there are radiographic findings that help you determine if the liver is small or if the liver is large. So what we use is the pyloric antrum. The pyloric antrum. That is the part of the stomach that is moving, not the fundus, but the pyloric antrum. So if the pyloric antrum the stomach is parallel to the rib, then you should see the pyloric antrum right at that curve, right at the costal arch. So if the liver enlarges, what's going to happen to the pyloric antrum? It's going caudal. What's going to happen to the pyloric antrum is the liver is small. It's going cranial. So that is a very easy parameter, bless you, a very easy parameter that you can use to evaluate the liver size. Is where is the stomach located? Now, what if you had a case where you couldn't see the stomach? There was no gas within the stomach and you can't identify it. Well, you can give it a little barium just to identify the location to see. Sometimes these pets have fluid within the abdomen, and so therefore you're unable to see the margins as the student stated here. The reason why you see the margin of the liver is because it is surrounded by fat. It is that's what this dark gray is here, which allows you to see. The soft tissue opacity here is probably a little bit of the tail of the spleen. But you see the outline of the pyloric antrum because it is surrounded by fat. If it were fluid, you would not see the margins because the fluid and the soft tissue are the same in opacity. So you wouldn't see the margins. So on the ventral dorsal, when there's hepatomegaly, and bless you too, let me just bless all of you all that you blessings. Sneezing also bring about money. I made that one up. I don't think that's a wise tale. I think that's a man's tale. Okay. Yeah. Okay. When the liver is enlarged, most of the time, it's the right liver lobes that become enlarged. So what you actually see then is soft tissue opacity in the upper right abdomen. So if the liver is enlarged, then what's going to happen to the stomach is the liver lobes are going to push the pyloric antrum toward midline, like this one. And so now it looks like a cat. So most of the stomach is in the upper left corner. And on the microhepatica, you can see now the pyloric antrum has moved cranially. And look how close the stomach is to the diaphragm. And of course, you could also use that the liver does not project caudal to the costal arch, etc. So you use those additional findings as well. All right, now, this is a list of differentials. So once you do the findings, so you would list the findings just like you did Monday, and then you would say, this pet has hepatomegaly. Now that's a radiographic diagnosis. You don't say this pet has Addison's disease, because I can't see that on a radiograph. You say it has hepatomegaly, and then these are some rule-outs and some differentials, and you list them based on what you think is most likely with the clinical history. And then you would move to, well, what would I do next to rule it out? What would I do next to rule it in, etc. And then treatment and then prevention. So that's the format, just like you followed on Monday. So differentials. Now I'm not going to spend time on that because we're going to do some interpretation. Hopefully, no, we will do some interpretation when we finish this. So I'm not going to spend. Anybody have any questions about those differentials? They all. A common cause of hepatomegaly with right-sided heart disease. So when you say right-sided heart disease, what is actually causing the liver to enlarge? It would be the hepatic veins. That's what's causing the liver to be enlarged. So if I say, well, what's causing the hepatomegaly? Right-sided heart failure? No, that's not what's causing the hepatomegaly. What's causing the hepatomegaly are the enlarged veins. And so when you have your ultrasound workshop, you'll be able to tell the difference between the veins, hepatic veins, and then the portal veins. Because if you call them the wrong thing, you're going to come up with a different differential. Okay, so those are, we forget about biliary disease because there's bile ducts in the parenchyma. And so for biliary disease, again, look at it's just general biliary disease. And if I say, well, what kind of biliary disease? Then I gave you some differentials. Okay. More, I want to make a note about lymphoma versus primary liver disease, liver neoplasia. Primary liver neoplasia, the most common neoplastic process, it is usually focal, would be hepatocellular carcinoma. That's a common tumor in the liver. And it's usually one spot. Now, it can metastasize to other areas of the liver. But when you look at that on ultrasound, you say there's a mass effect. There are other small nodules in the liver parenchyma. That would be your sonographic finding. And then what do you think? I think it has hepatic neoplasia with metastatic disease. You can say that because that's what you think, based on the findings. Then what would you do next to rule it out? Well, I would do an FNA, or I'd do a biopsy, etc. And then you treat accordingly. Lymphoma is typically a secondary neoplasia. It's not really considered a primary hepatic neoplasia, it's secondary, because it originates in lymph nodes. And then there's 5 stages of lymphoma. So when we see lymphoma in organs, usually it is diffuse. Usually it is diffuse versus regional with primary. So if you talk about neoplasia, you got to talk about benign and malignant. And if you're talking about masses, you also have to talk about benign and malignant. Because hepatoma, hepatic cysts, hepatic abscesses, those are all benign but they are masses. Everybody got that? Okay, so just saying I see a mass in the liver, that could be benign malignant, and if it is neoplasia, benign malignant. So you go in even more deep. It's like football that I know nothing about. When they say run deep or go deep, what is it?
Go deep.
Go what? Go what? Go long. Isn't that the word that says go deep?
Yes, the same thing. Go down, please.
Okay. I thought I heard go deep. Go long. Which one do y'all use? Go
It's the same
long or
thing.
go deep? Because I want to use it again. I want to be correct. All right. Okay, so here we go. Look at this list. This is a long list of differentials. And don't forget carpet storage disease and mesenteritis. We tend to forget that one. Okay, so here's primary neoplasia and the type. You know that hemangiosarc is common in the spleen, but it can also occur in the liver. Okay, microhepatica. And so now the liver, the fundus, the axis of the stomach has shifted cranially with the pyloric antrum, which should be like here caudally, but it has shifted cranial. And you can just barely see a little bit of liver cranioventrally. There's not very many causes of microhepatica. Generally, it's either cirrhosis or fibrosis. If you're thinking of cirrhosis, what do you expect to see if you don't do anything clinically? You expect for the liver to fail, and then there's fluid production in the abdomen. Portosystemic shunts, youngsters, and thank you for your differential on Monday. Now we're here. Intrahepatic versus extra